So the first poem that I'm going to read is called Opened Houses. And when my daughters were young, one of the things that we always used to like to do together on the weekends is stop at real estate open houses. It was like a real thrill for them. They would run inside just as soon as we got there and run upstairs and start claiming, whose bedroom, was whose. And that sort of morphing that happens when you go into someone else's house and imagine yourself living in it was something that informed this poem. Also, one of the things that I enjoy doing, and this probably makes you think of me as rather sketchy, but I like at night to take walks, and when people have their windows open and their curtains open and the lights on, I'm invariably drawn into looking into their house and seeing what's going on in there and wondering about them. So both of those things play into this poem. Opened houses. Anything is possible in an opened house. There are walls, but not the walls you are used to. Begin in a kitchen, humid with cinnamon and late sun. Near a raised window, a chair is turned where someone lingered to breathe in the forgiveness of boxwoods, the orderly air. If you sit down here, you will no longer be afraid of anything. This angle of light will hold you inside of it. Wait, and someone will walk through the door who wants nothing you cannot give. Among the bedrooms at the top of the stairs, you will find one that belongs to you. No curtain or carpet in it will remind you of any room you have ever called your own. That is how you will know it. No clocks or knickknacks will clutter surfaces or break the wood's long and lemon gleam. When you peer into the mirror above the bureau, the face that looks back at you will take your name. Walk out at night when the swift black erases you, when each yellow square fills with what you are not. Then, if you can become anything at all, it will be no more than the scent of pendulous lilacs too heavy to rise above a wet earth. There is mercy here. There is no moon. Street lamps are swallowed by hollies and oaks. Every road you turn down will glow with houses. Each glass passed will give up its pantomime of lives. Maybe one of them could be yours. People are not as close to their neighbors now as they used to be. People used to be much more folksy and homey with one another. Now, the people that I live next to, I really don't know too much about, and they don't know much about me. And this idea of what people really know about us, even though we live right next door to them, is what's involved here. What the neighbors know is so small, it might fit in my mailbox. I wish they would put it there, unfolded, explicit, so I could be certain of what they think they saw. The shaky black and white reel they have colorized, the beginnings and middles cobbled to find their way to the end. No one will sign his name. Each separate letter will be cut from newspapers, magazines, to keep the scales of knowing unbalanced. We have a piece of your life that we plan to torture into something we recognize. We want more pieces, but even then, we won't give you this one back. I once had all of their names, but didn't keep them. Did they keep mine? If we passed each other in some far-off town, I wouldn't know them, though I have lived beside them for nearly 30 years. Anonymity is a chosen loneliness, but a secret in a cul-de-sac has a fleeting life. Their eyes on my comings and goings, my middling tragedy, are a kind of extortion, even if they never open their mouths. If I do not give them reasons, they will think I had none. If enough people paint me a heart of pitch, a rudderless integrity, how could all of them be wrong? Whatever the neighbors know, it is not enough. But the rest of the story is not mine to tell. See me then, half in shadow, or turn me, if you must, toward your lurid light. I will grow older, quieter, until no one believes the tale you pin on me. I will wear sensible shoes. I will outfox you by being too dull to be bad. How many of you have ever seen the series of photographs that's come out fairly recently of the city of Detroit, the ruins of Detroit? Have any of you seen it? They're really startling photographs and very moving. One of them, as I was looking through the photographs, one of them really moved me. It's a photograph of a very fancy hotel ballroom, and it's just all in rubble, and there's a piano on its side, and it's dark, and there's glass all over the floor. And I found this particular photo very moving, and so that's what this poem is about. It's called Ballroom, Lee Plaza Hotel. The grand is tipped on its side. Octaves old enough to be ivory ascend into air that is empty of dancers. The lid is missing, looted for some vagrant's fire, African cherry or maybe East Indian rosewood, crackling into ash to thaw fingers. Treble strings, then bass, then soundboard tilt toward the ballroom's carved dome. All else is blue rubble, dull gold, glass shards made glitter by the street lamp through arched windows. How do I stop myself from imagining the couples clinging, twirling beneath the chain that once held a chandelier? How do I ignore the woman who surely leaned in sequins here across the glossy wood to shape notes that rose and broke against mirrored light? Even in the stilled shambles, something beautiful remains. Of all the images of this aching city, this is the one I keep coming back to, the one that I send to you instead of words. I'm gonna, although on Amazon it says that this is a book about a disintegrating marriage and the sale of a house, which it is, there's a lot more to it than that, and I have some poems in here which are from my childhood, and they're very different in tone. This one is, well, it's about the first boy I ever kissed. I was 6. His name was Wayne, and it's called How It Began. We didn't need to steal apples. My mother kept the plaid bowl full of Empires, Jonathans, Granny Smiths, and Galas, and had we come inside for a break from kissing in the green cave below the azaleas and rhododendrons, we could have had as many as we desired. It was instead because of the trees set back from the road, the padlocked gate, the prickly old man who wasn't that day rocking on the squeaking porch swing, the story we were already learning about who were the doers of bold deeds and who were the watchers. The boy scaled the chain link, dropped into high grass and dandelions, fell to his belly and wriggled down the deep lawn while I peeked from behind a hedge of thorns. He was in the crook of the crabapple, reaching for a second time when the shot cracked the air, scattering crows, setting blocks of penned dogs to barking. Another shot, another, and the boy was halfway down the yard, the one thieved prize clutched in his fist, the croak of the watchman at his back. "Stay the hell away from my apples!" And he cleared the fence and fell against me, his sweaty body beating and gulping air. There was a final cry. "I see you, Missy. You're as guilty as he is." We ran until we reached the alley, sliding down into gravel below a tool shed's low overhang. Swirled dust fell and stuck to our damp skin. He handed me the apple, small and hard, punctured already by some intruder, and I took the tiny bite because I had no other choice. we were through with kissing. The late gold of the afternoon filled with supper bells, and we went back to our lives. This was the first of my thefts, and the only one with gunfire. This next poem is about a family that lived next door to us growing up. And actually, it was a house that saw many families. It was a rental house, and we got quite a lot of mileage out of this house because all the families were weird and interesting in one way or another. But there was one family, it was a young couple and their child, and they were quite violent with one another. And this was something that occurred, and I never forgot it. It left a real indelible mark on me. It's called She Fled. She fled on foot, her baby in one arm, a brown grocery bag spilling clothes in the other. The screen door banged behind her and made all of us look up from kickball, through the gnats and wet August air, to where she had turned our street into a movie, the kind we had never been allowed to see. Before we could pivot and glance at each other, we heard the second slam, saw her husband standing on the stoop, hair frantic, a rifle with a telescopic sight clenched in one fist. She saw him too, and made a sound that seemed less sob than moan, tried to run faster, spilling colors from the bag she carried, leaving behind her a trail of tiny shirts, a flowered skirt, a pink brassiere. I want to say that he shot the gun, peered down that scope, and fired, because in my memory, this is a story of a man who used all the weaponry he had. But truth be told, he never had to pull that trigger. He covered the ground she gained in seconds, shook her hard by the arm that held the bag, which tore and spilled more colors, as well as the folded squares of cotton diapers, and then yanked her back down the street, she and the baby, both crying, her face gray, her son's purple. From start to finish, it took no more than 2 minutes. And then their door was closed, so we could only listen a long while to the hot voices, noises that escaped their open windows. The clothes stayed in the street until someone's mother gathered them and laid them folded on their steps, then turned and told all of us firmly, "Go home." And so we went. I wondered after where that woman thought she had been going when she tore up the street to what seemed like nowhere, her neat house and yard behind her, if she thought then that she too was going home instead of fleeing it. This is called Missing the Train. It is about my experience of watching Soul Train when I was a teenager, a show that I loved dearly. I can't even express to you how much I loved this show. Okay. Missing the Train. Every Saturday at 5 in my basement den, I had a date with Don Cornelius to ride the Soul Train to funk. Teetering in my platforms and hip-hugging bells, I was a shining star, the brick house of a Commodore's bass dream. I shimmied, bumped, and boogied in flickering blue light, practicing moves that would mesmerize faceless men out there waiting. In the mirrorless gloom, my groove thing was flawless. I was diva of dazzle and dance, goddess of sex and simmer. Night played a backbeat promise. This dance or the next, Mr. Big Stuff with his badass fro, rubber band grace, and gold chain would discover me at last. We would get down in swirls of wet smoke and stuttering strobe lights. Every Saturday, same dream. Alone, I was a stone gas, strutting down the line, fist raised as dawn wished me peace, love, soul. White girl brimming with black pride. By night, I'd be me again, furtive toe tapper, corner hugger, too timid to buy her first real ride on the train. Some of you may know, I grew up in Arlington, and went to W&L for high school. One of the places that I used to like to hang out after school was over where the hospice is now. It used to be Woodlawn, and then it became the hospice. But behind there, there's a park, and most of the really cute guys hung out in that park after school, and so did I. This is called the Boys of Woodlawn Park. Boys spun from the rope swing to the humid tangle of the creek, skinning shins on roots that twined the banks, slicing feet on rocks and green bottle glass. They let me swing too, though I never let go of the knot, but kept fists clenched as I circled the water, long hair trailing behind in lank streamers, new breasts pressed hard against last year's shirt. Boys sat on the sewer pipe, smoking Marlboros and licked tight joints, cutting with old pocket knives into shoulders, then tracing the sudden red to make blue ballpoint cannabis leaf tattoos that I knew would surely poison their blood. They let me smoke too, and I took shallow puffs, breathing scent, not smoke, letting bare feet dangle over the murk that bred below. Boys dragged a stolen sofa down rocks to the sewer's mouth, shoved it through to where the tunnel budded in a wider bloom they christened theirs. Hidden within it, they drank their father's beers, took turns with girls like Trinket Doyle. They beckoned me too, but I hung back, leery of that narrow gloom, the stories unfolding there, retold in school. They were only mine in the afternoons when late suns slanted long shadows over the slide and the jungle gym, when air was thick with called names, scents of dinner roasting. Night penned me up behind safe doors, where only an open window would sometimes snare the sound of them, reckless in an unlit world. From that breeze, as it turned outside the screen, I composed my dreams of unknown, unknowable boys. I have known since very shortly after my father died that he had been married before my mother. I didn't know it while he was alive. My mother revealed this big secret after he died. And it was also revealed to me that the woman who he had been married to had once been Tennessee Williams' girlfriend in high school, which I was enchanted by this because it was like very close to fame. I liked it. So I was sort of curious about it when I was younger, but I didn't know that much about it. And I hadn't really pursued it, too avidly. I always used to tell my my 11th grade class when I taught 11th grade and did streetcar that that I had this connection, but that was as far as it went. And then last year in May, a friend called me and said, did you know that one of the last plays that Tennessee Williams ever wrote, that there's a character in it named Terrence McCabe, my father's name? Oh, really? And this started me on this whole research project to learn more about it. And I'm working on a book about the whole thing. So I've learned an awful lot since last May. I'm just going to read you the first 2 pages, really, of this essay that's going to be published in Shenandoah in October. And it's called His Other Life, Searching for My Father, His First Wife, and Tennessee Williams. The wife's first name was Hazel Kramer. That was her name. At night, in bed, waiting for sleep to make my mind stop chasing itself, I began praying to Hazel Kramer. Well, not exactly praying, more like bargaining, more like begging. Let me tell your story, I said to her. Let me undo your death, because I didn't believe that she really wanted to die. She was only 38 years old, a tall, willowy woman whom Tennessee Williams had described as a redhead with great liquid brown eyes and skin of pearly translucence. A voice that was so lovely she had sung on the radio. Enough money that she could afford to live without a man. All of the gossips were quick to share that she was a wealthy woman. Her friends had received happy letters full of plans for the future. I petitioned her in the darkness. The only light in the room, the red numbers of the digital clock that told me, again, I had stayed up too late searching for signs from her. Did you regret leaving my father? For of course I assumed that she had left him, not that he had left her. Did you miss him? Even his teasing, his bad jokes, the way he could embarrass you by drawing every cab driver and sales clerk into a long-winded conversation? I knew something about that. Or was there another man who made you happier, a man you turned to instead of my father? This was the story that had been hinted at by my mother, her voice dropping to a whisper, even though we had been the only two in the room. Am I making snap judgments about you? Do I have it all wrong? Then let me know. I can be even-handed. Believe me, I know what it is to be misunderstood. I know how rumor and innuendo can create a woman who never really existed. But my prayer was absorbed by the blackness. My father had a secret that he believed needed keeping. As best he could, he kept the details of it from my mother throughout their marriage, offering only a skeleton truth for her to flesh out in some way that she could accept and live with. To my sister and me, he gave no hint at all. Everything I knew of my father's life occurred either when he was a child or after he met my mother. The decades of the 30s and the 40s were empty. I knew nothing of them. It was September 1973, a hot Virginia night in which the only cool air to be found came from the box fan that whirred by the sofa where my father sat with his Manhattan and the evening paper. It was one of the last weeks that I had with him before he went into the hospital and several months later died. That evening, as always, he wanted to know what I was studying in school, and I hurried through the math, Spanish, and history, and then added, in English, we're reading The Glass Menagerie. How hard must it have been for him to hear that and say nothing, to not take advantage of that moment to impress me, casually remarking, oh yes, I knew Tom Williams. My father, who craved fame and revered writers, must certainly have considered for a moment telling me at least a little of what he knew. He needn't have said anything to me about Hazel. He could have kept that hidden and let me think that he had met Williams in some casual way. Instead, he said only, that's a good play. Do you like it? I never got to hear him tell me the story that was his to tell. That story was then locked in a steamer trunk in our basement, the contents of which not even my mother had seen. Indeed, she had vowed never to open it, a vow that she would one day break. That's the first couple of pages. It goes on for 20 more. If you're interested, you should get Shenandoah. This poem is a poem that my mother died fairly recently, about a year and a half ago. I wrote this poem while she was still quite ill. And it also was written, do you remember that huge snow we had a while back? It was the really big one of 2010, everything up to here. And you know, the power went out and it was just a mess. It was written at that time as well. This is called Mercies. My mother used to tell me, it's a mercy we don't know the future. Who could linger in a kiss, run the tongue along summer's salt lick, the fingers over the cinching of two bodies, if we knew how autumn would untie that knot, how the salt would lose its taste? Who could toast to a new year if we knew all that it held? Hours before an accident, a father wipes icy lace from the windshield and presses it like a gift into his son's hand. A woman laughs on a cell phone, buys a thick paperback before the boarding call to a plane that will not take her home. But when the minister dropped by the other day to visit with my mother, she knew enough to ask us, am I dying? and we knew enough to tell her no. Days now after the blizzard that took 2 Samaritans, that left strands of dark, cold houses closed fast around those who couldn't leave them, that gouged a ragged, gravel-pocked gash into my new car, I looked out my bedroom window to find that my house had become a weapon. From the eaves hang uncanny 12-foot fangs of ice, each dripping into tips as deadly as stilettos, aimed at the unbroken snow of the back lawn. They glitter, eerily lit by street lamp, while I lie, unsleeping, staring out at a new landscape through my home's bared snarl. I could get up now, crank open the glass, knock them javelins swift and spent, impotent, into tenantless white, but I do not. I leave them to fall in their own time. It is also a mercy that we can know the future and live on matter-of-factly as though we do not. This is a poem called The Mail. And if you've ever split up with someone, or if you've ever lived in a house with someone and they moved away, you know that oftentimes the mail keeps coming. Even though you put in a stop order at the post office, it just keeps coming. And that is what inspired this poem, The Mail. Every day, at least one letter arrives with your name on it, but more often, 2 or 3. The stack begins to spill across the teak, and the cats take to napping on this island of white. I should call to tell you that not everyone knows you are gone. If you have posted word somewhere, it may have gone astray. People are out there, awaiting your reply. I believe you may have won something. Your broker seems anxious to share options you have somehow been living without. A lucky thing that I am here to save you from missing anything critical to your conduct of business in this world. I should call to notify you. I should call to say that the cats are keeping warm all that demands your attention. And perhaps to tell you that soon this house that has received and held so much of what you need to know will no longer be mine. That strangers will find these missives meant for you, will bear the burden for you that I have been carrying for so long. No matter what we do or whom we tell, there will be days ahead when someone sends us a message we will not be here to open, asks a question we will never have the chance to answer. Who knows who might in some distant year return to love us with no better envoy than the Postal Service to say, we are still waiting, to let them know where we've gone. This is a poem that's very near and dear to my heart. It's a poem about my daughters and me. There was a period of time when they were quite young, where I was a single mother, and we lived just the 3 of us. And it was a time that they treasured, and they called it the naked days. And it was a joke, and we always laughed about it. One day, one of them said to me, "You should write a poem about the naked days, Mom." So I did. The naked days. The house then was a clearing of white light, bordered by a forest no one knew how to move through but the 3 of us. This was after and before there were men. This was the lull we called alone. Now when I want to conjure that time, I try wind, wood smoke, wet earth, wolves. My daughters moved on all 4s, hair scented with fallen oak leaves and torn branches. Nothing was quiet except the world outside us. We opened our mouths and could breathe the moon. This was after and before. Now the older tells the younger, remember the naked days. Those days when they wore their bodies unfathered, unbrothered, when they lived in their skin with their fast hearts and their lengthening bones. Then I lived with no one in my bed, the wide sheets as undisturbed as a sea I did not have to cross. When I rose, I was their mother, their other, we were three and all. We named ourselves with more than one name, and balanced each on our tongues, gave them as offerings to the forgiving air. For a time that didn't last, we let ourselves answer to all of them. This is last poem. It's called Creed, and it's almost the last poem in the book. This is probably as close to writing about something that has even the remotest hint about science in it. I at least mentioned physics, but it doesn't come in very close. Okay. Creed. And there's a little epigraph at the beginning that says, "In my Father's mansion are many rooms," which is an allusion to something in the Bible. Physics has been a comfort since I strayed from God. Think instead, I am told, of my life as a series of rooms in a house. The one I just walked out of continues to exist even though I can no longer see it. And I trust that the one I will enter next is already waiting to hold me inside of it, though it is not yet visible. This I know, even if I've never been inside this house before, because this is the nature of houses. And when I lie at night in bed in my upper room, I like to think how the basement goes on without me. Dust motes settling on shelves and waiting to swirl at the opening of the door at the top of the stairs. This is as close as I've come to scientific thought. If I do not push my inquiry too hard, it seems to suffice, though I do not forget that houses burn, that trees cleave beneath an axe of lightning and fall through roofs, or that sometimes properties must be sold. I have lived now